The first Star Wars movie, A New Hope, was released in 1977, and ever since, toy shops have been filled of merchandise from the Star Wars series. What's interesting about this particular toy, which is a Baby Yoda, was that initially when the first part of the Mandalorian series was released, they didn't consider him worthy making merchandise from, which they received a lot of backlash from because he ended up being a real crowd favorite. And now a few months later, after they realized just how popular he is, the market is full of Baby Yoda toys, ranging from this size to plushy, soft, more like teddy bears, which is interesting because it would be inappropriate to let a child watch The Mandalorian as it is 11 years old and plus would be appropriate to watch it. As it is unethical to market directly towards children, for a long time, people that want to sell children toys use either cartoons or movies to get children to buy merchandise, which makes more money than the movie itself a lot of the time. Something quite interesting about Star Wars is that it's had a real resurgence, and considering that 1977 is when The New Hope came in, and still every aisle in a toy store is full of merchandise directly related to Star Wars. For the teddy bear versions of the Baby Yoda, it's interesting because chances are it's parents of the children that like the show that want to see the toy in their house, and they're the ones that buy it, whereas the child doesn't actually care. The child is likely to lose interest quite quickly in a trendy toy that doesn't leave a lot of room for creativity or innovation. A lot of the innovation when it comes to the Baby Yoda in the show, and then it translates to any figure of him, is the level of cute, which releases endorphins in your brain while you're watching the show, but then when you have the figure in your house every time. This is a match the shape game, which helps with learning and development to help the child identify both shapes and colors. And the sounds, I think, are to help them recognize where they go. There's a few missing shapes. And then it's a twist open, which I don't think a small child could quite handle. And then you can take them out and start again. It also can go on the side, and because it's a round shape, it can roll and rattle. The basic premise for this toy is really interesting, but the materiality is really quite yucky plastic feeling, very smooth, and even though I have a feeling it's quite an expensive toy, it feels very cheap. The Tolo website says that they are regularly tested to the ASTM and CPSIA and EN71 standards, and that they use fair trade for their manufacturing. A small child might really enjoy this toy for the sounds that it makes and the bright colors. The yellow is the first color that a human baby can start to see, so this might hold a real appeal, but I don't think it would hold a lot of appeal for a eco-conscious parent. Since trains were invented, having a mock-up railway set has been a childhood classic, as both girls and boys love trains. And there's something really fun about building your own customizable track from pieces that you already own. This is about the cheapest, nastiest plastic set you could possibly find. The mechanism which holds the pieces together is quite interesting, where you clip them in and you're good to go. They have these pins on the underneath to use a bridge support so that you can get pieces that raise up high. All the pieces can connect to all the other pieces, and all the pieces that are the same color are the same shape as well. I feel like the quality of this particular toy is about that you'd expect from a $2 shop or any other disreputable toy sales. The toys are such cheap plastic that I think they would have quite a high choke hazard, as the pieces could break off really easily. There's no long-term value in buying these toys, but I think they would be a good alternative if your child really wants a toy train set and you don't have a lot of money. Although the risk with buying cheaper toys is there's a good chance that they are not up to safety codes when it comes to heavy metal contamination or leaching nasty plastics. This particular set I don't see as being particularly innovative, but I think the idea of having a toy train set is, or at least it was when it was first considered, because children love to copy adults' behavior, and making it accessible for children to run a train station at a much smaller scale is quite cool. There is a nice level of consistency with this set though, as all the corner pieces that turn are green, and just like with all the other pieces, so that once the child understands how one clicking mechanism works, they can rebuild the set as many times as they want in as many ways as they want. And rather than saying, can I please have a corner piece, they can say, can I please have a green piece, and the other person will know what they're saying. So that could aid in clear communication and potentially make it more accessible to sharing. He goes from being a somewhat odd-looking regular turtle into a ninja turtle in quite a disturbing process, actually. Whereas a child, you can play with the different components, and the fact that he converts from one thing to another could add some extra longevity and value. There we go, that's a bit more human. This is a great example of using children's media time to sell them cheap toys. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a comic that was thought up in the early 80s as a joke pitch and continued being produced as a comic form till 2015. And of course, a lot of merchandise was created through that time and is still till this day. The absurdity of the characters, I think, really appeals to a child audience. And now that they've been around for a long time, they also appeal to this nostalgia of the original readers who now have children. The fact that the toy is a 2-in-1 adds some extra value. There is a nice amount of articulation points on this doll, which means that the child can pose it in multiple different ways, and that could add to play. It might be nice for a child to play with something that they've seen on TV and they already know the characters, but I think it limits imagination and creativity because they already know who the character is and they'll play with him as himself, as opposed to having something that's more plain that allows them to create their own character, not based off someone else or someone else's imagination. The fact that the head doubles up without anything being a loose part that can be lost is very interesting, and having this mechanism where there's a magnet and a clip and a twist and rotation to change the head is quite interesting. And that the second head is flat means that it suggests that in this way this turtle is down, and the other head that faces more forward is the more humanized version of this turtle. The other big takeaway is the level of nostalgia that it produced for my partner. As when he saw the toy in the op shop, he completely lit up because it's one that he had as a child, and it brought back a lot of fond memories. And this, I think, is an interesting piece, not only for the contents of the box, the toy itself, but for the packaging as well. So I'll just open that up here for you to see. So there's the box here, there's the polystyrene here, and the polystyrene here. The toy itself could have just been packaged in this one box, and that would have saved a lot of the material waste that came along with this product. This toy is a magnet-based construction toy where you put things together to make structures. I think that this toy was meant to somehow compete with Lego, but even as a child, I thought it fell a bit short. The special thing about Lego is that every piece can connect to every other piece within reason. Whereas this one, I always found, even as a child, that there was too many components that you had to struggle with to make any kind of structure. What was quite interesting over the last 15 years is to see how the amount of advertising that they spent on this particular kind of toy, not this toy specifically, where you have the poles and the magnets and other items, is how they've shown quite clearly to fall flat, and there's not been a particular amount of interest, even though the concept of them is quite cool. There's a lot these toys can teach about how magnets work, about polarity, and about geometry, and how certain shapes have certain amounts of strength and other shapes have more strength or less strength. Another thing that's quite interesting about this toy is that this would have been probably a $30 box of these magnet toys, and the actual bits that are usable and buildable, you can just about make one cube. And when children are particularly interested in blocks and building, they're a lot younger, and that toys that they're this size would be very dangerous for them, as it's a good chance they would just try and eat them. I think the big takeaway from this particular toy is looking at what is the actual capability of the toy, how many different ways can it be played with? Is it enough to warrant the price point? Would it be something where you buy one pack this year and then an extension pack the next year? Or would you get so bored with it in the first year that you wouldn't bother buying the next pack to extend the play? Something else that would be interesting to consider is, how do you have more than one person playing with this toy? A big part of play, particularly at a younger age, is interacting with others and learning how to do so in a kind and respectful way.